I'm Patty Williams-Downs, CEO and founder of Breaking Bounds Enterprises. Welcome back for another episode of the Boundary Breakers Podcast, where we share the stories of boundary breakers that are using their unique gifts and talents to transform the world. So please join me in welcoming former director of Houston Public Works, longstanding Houston community advocate, and boundary breaker, Carol Haddock.
Oh, thank you, Patty. It's my pleasure to be here.
Yes, I'm so grateful that you will be able to share your story with the world. And so let's jump in.
Thank you. Well, I start off with just a small town kid. I grew up in Uvalde, Texas. I grew up with a large extended family. We spent lots of time with family, friends, church, school, all those things. Summers were fun. Always doing things. My parents knew from a young age, that I was probably going to grow up and be an engineer. I was always taking things apart. I was always putting things back together. I was always moving the river by putting rocks in certain places. Always interested in how things worked.
What was fascinating to you, if you can remember, when you were a girl? What was fascinating about the moving things around, taking things apart?
It was just the understanding how they worked. It was understanding what made different things tick, understanding how to fix something when something broke, how to not necessarily fix it with the original parts, but fix it with what you had. And because, that's one of the big things about being in a small town. You don't have a 24/7 grocery store or Walmart or any of those things. And so you have what you have, and you have to make do with what you have.
Tell us a little bit more about what did you learn in Uvalde, and what sort of experiences shaped how you have come to understand who you are?
So one of the things about rural America is that everybody has to play a part. Everybody has to be involved. There's not, yes, there were gender roles, but there weren't expectations that one was lesser than the other or anything like that. Everybody had to be part of the community. Everybody had a role. Everybody had a place. I was blessed that all four of my grandparents worked outside the house, which is very unusual.
Well, why was that unusual?
Women didn't work out of the house, in the 50s, 60s, 70s, and having two role models that, to me, it wasn't unusual that I would grow up and have a job. It was just expected. It wasn't unusual that I'd grow up and go to college. Mm-hmm. It was expected.
Right.
And it wasn't really until I got to college that I learned that was unusual, that I had those role models.
What happened that you started understanding, oh, this is unique, this is different?
As I made friends in college, I learned that it was unusual that I knew all my cousins. That not only did I have 17 first cousins on my mom's side,
okay.
And that not only did I know them, we all spent time together. And I was like, "What? You don't know your cousins?" And so when we would talk about things that different things about our lives and our background and things like that, I would say, "Oh, my grandma's a postmaster." And she was a postmaster in the 60s and the 70s, and in a time when there were very few female postmasters. But she wanted to, and she went out and took the civil service exam, and she went out and applied for and got a position, and did that. And it was something that she loved. It actually was about serving the community, mm-hmm. providing that local access to the outside world through the post office.
So would you say that watching your grandmothers and your mother kind of shaped this idea that you could go after what you wanted? Like, what did that tell you about yourself?
So absolutely, that there were no limits. And it wasn't just the grandmothers. I mean, it was my grandfathers, my dad, my cousins, everybody in my family. Both my sisters feel the same way. We were literally just raised to, if you want it, go for it. If it's something that you think you should do, you think it's something you could do, go for it. And if you think it's something you can't do, but you want to do it, then how do we help you get prepared? How do we help you get there?
Yeah. So what values started to emerge for you as a kid?
So there was a lot of value of service. There was a strong value of, you weren't in a community to be a taker. You were in a community to contribute, and if everybody's contributing, then everybody's needs are being met. And so there was a strong sense of, you show up, you participate. When somebody needs to step up, if you look around and nobody else is stepping up, step up. And that has continued throughout my life.
Okay. So service sounds like the umbrella, and under that it is where there is a gap, you step in and everybody plays a role.
Yes.
So talk to us about where that took you beyond Uvalde.
We'll start off with how I ended up in Houston. I came to Houston to go to college. My parents drove me to Houston and dropped me off at Rice University in 1987. And all of a sudden, I was not a big fish in a small pond. I was average.
Okay, say more about that. That sounds like it was shocking.
It was shocking. It was shocking. When you've grown up and you've always been the one to solve the problems and the one to have the answers, and all of a sudden you're surrounded with a bunch of people just like you. In fact, you're at best average. And it's a very humbling experience, but it's also a great experience. To see the other side of that contribution and the other side of that community is, you get to play all the roles.
So it sounds like you were faced with this internal barrier of like redefining your identity for what you thought you were, and you kind of got to a place where you were like, oh no. That. What were some other barriers you faced as you traversed from Uvalde to Houston and sort of started your career?
Just in a town that you spent most of your childhood in, everybody knows everybody. You have an instant network. Your parents' friends they vouch for you just because they know your parents and they know your family. And all of a sudden you're coming to a big city and you don't have that. And you still have internally, my word is my bond, but the rest of the world doesn't know that. And so you begin to, luckily my first job, I actually had a college friend. We graduated with the same degree, same year. And she called me and said, I know you're looking for a job. There's a company that I interviewed at that it's not a good fit for me, but I think it's a good fit for you. Would you like me to introduce you? And I ended up working there for 6.5 years.
Okay.
And so it was still that same small town. She was from Brooklyn, New York.
Yeah.
I mean, but at the same time, it was still that same small town connection and community.
Right.
That opened that first door.
Yeah. And it sounds like you took a step. You took a step to build some relationships that could help you facilitate some of this social currency that really mattered for how, it felt like it was secure for you in Uvalde, and you got here and it wasn't there. So tell us what continued to happen. How did you find your way into the public works system?
Absolutely. So it was a private consulting firm, and I was there for, like I said, 6.5 years. And I got a call from a university professor, somebody that I'd worked with when I was at Rice. And she asked me to come get my master's degree at the University of Houston. And I was like, I don't have time.
I don't have time to get a master's.
I don't have time. And the more I thought about it, I thought, I don't have time to improve my career because of my job. And so it really made me take a step back and ask myself that question of what is more important to me at this point? And I realized that private consulting was awesome. It was an incredible learning bed. Technically, you learn the network, you learn business, you learn all those things. But in civil engineering, even in private consulting, you're typically serving a government entity and serving the community. So I took that leap and went over to the Harris County Flood Control District because my passion was rivers, watersheds, flooding.
Okay.
Even as a kid, we would go watch the rivers when they flood.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I grew up in Flash Flood Alley.
Okay.
So that allowed me the time to go get that master's degree. And I didn't go get it with the professor that called me. I actually went and got a public administration degree because I felt like as an engineer that we are not taught the currency of public service. We're not taught how to budget. We're not taught how to do policy. We're not taught any of those things. We're taught how to solve the technical problems.
How did you know that distinction, though? That's a pretty healthy distinction at a pretty young age, where you said, engineering is going to take me this way, but I actually need to understand. I have to have a different set of skills and a little bit more holistic. How did you even arrive at that knowing?
Well, so I actually watched the budget process one year.
Okay.
At the Commissioner's Court.
Yeah.
And I watched the director of the flood control district go before commissioner's court, and you propose your budget, and the question the commissioners had was, how much money do you need? And the response was, well, how much money do you have? Because we can put all of it to good use. And they were kind of like, okay, you're not answering our question. And then the hospital district came in and they asked the same question, and they said, well, if you give us the same budget that we had last year, we will serve this many fewer patients. To serve the same number of patients, we need this budget.
Okay.
And to serve more patients, we need this budget.
Yeah.
And I was like, wait, how did
those two answers sound very different?
They sound very different. and how do they know to, and they got the budget that they requested,
Okay.
and we ended up with what we needed, but not the larger budget or the increases or anything like that. And so it really intrigued me. It's like, I don't understand how they knew to answer the question that way.
Yeah, so it sounds like it piqued your interest, and you said, similar to what you did as a young girl, which was, hey, here's an opportunity. I'm going to go figure this out. Yeah. It sounds like you kind of did the same thing there. And so you went to school, you found yourself at the public works system. And
I did. And so from there, I actually got an opportunity to go spend a year in D.C. I did a congressional fellowship and spent a year working on Capitol Hill doing policy. I got hooked. It was, oh man, it was so much fun. I did. And I will tell you, though, not on the power. And it was the one thing that's really scary about Washington, D.C. for many people is it is very easy to be corrupted by the power. And what I was hooked on was the ability to make a difference. And there's hundreds and thousands of people up there that's why they're there, and that's what they do. And it's a phenomenal thing. And when I came back to Houston after a year, the city approached me to come to the city, and I loved working in the flood control district. And so it took 2 or 3 conversations before I said, oh, okay, I can contribute not just in flooding and storm drainage, but I can contribute across infrastructure.
okay.
And that's what really, when I began to think about how do you take that community, not just the social network of a community, but the infrastructure that underpins a community on a daily basis.
Yeah. So for our listeners, bring us more into sort of the tangibility of the public good or the social good of your former role. What specifically were you over, and what did you all do?
So Houston Public Works is responsible for the city of Houston's water system, wastewater system, the street system, and the storm drainage system, as well as permitting of all public and private structures development. So it is, I always used to say that it was the vanilla cake, and that everybody could put whatever frosting and sprinkles they wanted on it, but you couldn't have the cake without that foundation of the cake. And so it was the foundation. It concerns how people get to and from work and school and places of worship, the water and the wastewater services to the businesses that you need to use. It's all of those things that are kind of hidden and not seen, except the streets. But it's those things that make everything else in Houston possible.
So tell us, what was unique about serving in that role as director?
Houston, the 4th largest city in the U.S., so it's a very large department. In fact, we're the largest accredited department in public works department in the United States. I had the honor of being appointed as the first female director in 100 years to lead that department.
Wow.
There weren't many women that had risen to that point because there weren't many women that got degrees in engineering. There weren't many. So it was time. But it's also an amazing honor to get to be in that seat.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So you and I have spoken in previous conversations, and you have such a rich understanding of who you were during that time and how you evolved. So take us through some pivotal moments that occurred while you were in that role, and what did you learn in those moments?
Oh, goodness. Let's just start with how I got the role.
Okay.
So we had a director, an appointed director, and there was a controversy, and they had to step down. And I was appointed in an interim status through a press release.
Oh. Okay.
No conversations, no nothing, just all of a sudden.
No heads up?
No heads up. Just all of a sudden a press release went out and I am the interim director. And so the next morning we had a staff meeting scheduled with all the senior leadership. It was already on the books. And we show up that next morning and this leans back into that when there needs to be somebody step up. This is from my childhood, step up. And so we go into that room and everybody's confused and everybody's scared. And I was like, guys, you still know how to do this. You still know how to treat water. You still know how to repair potholes. You still know how to lead your teams. You know today what you knew yesterday. So yes, we have controversy and we have uncertainty, but we don't have uncertainty in the jobs. So that was a big one. And then 5 weeks later, I actually had gone to New Zealand and to Australia for some vacation and a conference. And while I was in New Zealand, Hurricane Harvey hit Houston.
While you were away?
While I was away.
Okay.
So I'm 5 weeks into the job, and I'm not even here.
Wow.
And when I left, we knew there was a hurricane coming, and all the projections were it was either going to San Antonio and pushing through the hill country, or it might come back and we get 15, 20 inches of rain. And that's not what we got. It's not what we got. But even in that, there are lessons.
In 2017, Hurricane Harvey unleashed its fury on Houston. Streets turned into rivers, neighborhoods became unrecognizable, and lives were upended in the blink of an eye. It was a storm unlike any other, a test of resilience for a city built on strength and unity. But in the face of unimaginable destruction, Houston's spirit endured. Neighbors became heroes, communities came together, and hope became the cornerstone of recovery. At the heart of this recovery was Carol Haddock and her dedicated team. With unwavering determination, they led the charge to repair and restore a city battered by the storm. From rebuilding infrastructure to reimagining what resilience means, their work ensured Houston could rise again, stronger and more united than ever. Because of boundary breakers like Carol Haddock, Houston didn't just recover, it set a new standard for what it means to overcome. This is a story of grit, leadership, and the power of a community that refuses to give up.
One of the biggest lessons I learned, and one of the things that we implemented from that, was that we would always have an executive and a communications expert not in the zone of impact.
Okay.
Because I was able to get a good night's sleep. I had access to internet. I was able to monitor all of the emails and everything that were going back and forth and be like, hey, you two people are trying to solve the same thing, different ways, get together. And so, lessons learned. And even from that, we actually stood up a full-time year-round emergency response team that was responsible for training, responsible for developing all of the networks and all the stuff that we needed during an emergency. And while all of us flexed during an emergency, there were people that it was their responsibility to make sure everybody had those job descriptions and the ability to flex.
So you were back at everybody can play a unique role.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. Different pivotal moments. Blue sky boil water notice. We had a power outage on site at one of our water treatment plants that actually caused us to not be able to push water into the system. The plant never went down. Everything in the plant was fine, and the water in the pipes was fine. But because we had pressures drop below the state mandate, all of a sudden we're in a situation where we have to issue a statewide or a citywide boil water notice. On a blue sky day, no emergency, no bad weather, no nothing. Wasn't CenterPoint's fault. We had power to the plant. It was an internal failure. We actually had an old line underground that the insulation had worn out and it faulted. And the team got the plant reset and got everything back up within 30 minutes, which was amazing.
Yeah.
But we still had to go through this process.
Yeah. So it sounds like you were able to use service and everybody has a role and sort of your passion for igniting people towards a common good. So I'm gonna pivot the question and make it a little bit different, which is, what did you learn about yourself?
Through the years, the lesson that keeps teaching me is that you need to understand when you need to be in lead and when you need to let other people step up. There are times that you need to step in and make decisions. And that's one of the privileges of having the title and the role, is that you ultimately get to make decisions and be held accountable for those decisions. But that somebody who truly understands what that role has and means is completely willing to let the experts bring you the solutions and bring you the recommendations.
And why was that such a turning point for you? What about that was hard to implement previously?
Well, it's been an organization that, all the decisions had always been made at the top. And so to change that, and some people will say it's because I'm a woman, some people will say it's because I'm from a small town, lots of different reasons. But at the end of the day, I think it's just because I fundamentally believe that everybody has a role. And, that my role is not to dictate, but to direct. And so that was a very different approach to how it was done. And quite frankly, we were able to do a lot more with everybody able to fully contribute.
How did that impact your team? I can imagine it probably made them feel very differently under your leadership than with different leadership.
So, and it's never perfect, but I will say that I've had multiple people tell me I felt free to do my job for the first time, to actually have contribution, to actually bring problems forward with solutions in ways that I never had been able to do before. And so that's one of the things in leaving. I know the team is ready. They've been carrying the load, so they can continue to carry the load.
And I know every time you talk about your team, it feels so personal to you. When you started to join your team in the field, what did you start learning?
Oh my goodness. So that was definitely one of those pivotal moments. I had a chief operating officer who was like, Carol, we need to go to the team in the field. And, I was like, I don't have time, because I had only ever seen the job done the way that it had been done before me. And I was like, I don't have time. I got all this stuff I have to do. And finally I was like, okay, let's go. And we went to the first facility, and, it's 200 men and women in this room out in the field. And it was, out off of McCarty Road. It's an area of town where the streets are rough, not crime rough, but literally the roads are rough. And, there's big trucks, and there's a landfill, and you walk in there and you just feel the passion of these people to serve the community. They want to get out there and get to work. In some ways, they were like me. They're like, I'm too busy. Why are you out here? But to get in the room and to talk to them and to listen to them and discuss what problems they're having and what's going on during the day, and to truly understand what they're facing in challenges and what opportunities they see, can really, really change the way you lead.
How did it?
Well, it really made it where instead of putting the work at the center, we put the employee at the center. And when you put the employee at the center, you set them up to be successful and get the work done. Yeah. And to feel like they're coming to a safe space, a safe place to work. And like I said, we weren't perfect. We still had pockets in areas that needed additional work. But when I started, I used to get emails from, these, I'll call them fake email accounts, but disgruntledemployee@gmail.com. And by the time I left, they were just sending me emails from their work email.
Oh, wow.
Hey, this is going on. You should know about it. Because we built that trust.
Yeah.
That if they tell me something's going on, we're going to do that. And so it really was about creating an environment where people become empowered.
Yeah, and showing up for them in a really meaningful way. Yeah. So something you've said, I'd love for you to unpack for our listeners. You said, when you got in the field, you learned that it wasn't about the pipes. It was about the people.
It's about the people. It's always about the people. The only reason that public works exists, that civil engineering exists, that all of the infrastructure exists, is for the people. We wouldn't have it if we didn't have the people in the community, which really kind of brings you that full circle back to what I learned as a kid in the network and the community, and everybody has a role. This infrastructure is there to support the people.
Yeah. So what was it like moving away from this really, really important role in the community, but also it sounds like it helped to shape you.
Good and sad, both. I'm proud of the team. And I did it my way. I went out with style. I said goodbye and know that I left it in the best shape it could be left in under my watch. I miss it because I miss the people, the team, the collaboration, the successes, the celebrations, the triumphs, even the challenges. When you get in a room, oh my gosh, problem solving is so much fun. It really is, and I still get in a problem with problem solving. I mean, I can get totally in the weeds with problem solving, but to know that the team that's there has the tools to take it beyond my limitations. There's sadness, there's loss, but there's also hope and excitement for what's next. How do I take this sadness, grab onto the things that made me sad, the people, the community, the service, and use that to look for what is that next thing? How do I take those pieces of passion and craft what's next?
I love that. How do I take those pieces of passion to craft what's next?
Yeah.
When you have thought about it or reflected on it and you said, I can think through a list, what comes up?
Where I'm looking right now is those areas where serving the community, my skill set can further a group that may already be there. Whether it's a nonprofit group, whether it's some other community-based group. People keep expecting me to move away. My husband's a 7th generation Houstonian. Our roots are deep. I was born and raised in Texas, granted the other side of San Antonio, but I'm invested in, and I love this community. Having grown up in a rural area, I did not know and I did not appreciate the patterns of development that were subsidized by or influenced by, or even in some cases, disincentivized by government policies, and how we have communities that have substandard infrastructure, which impacts their daily lives in ways that my life isn't impacted just by where they wake up. And so how do we take those opportunities to really, whether it's the federal funding, whether it's the community-based efforts, but the government showing up to help is usually not a relationship that starts with trust. And so it's those other community groups that can bridge that area.
Yeah. This sounds like a beautiful full circle. Like I just had this aha moment where a lot of your journey has been figuring out ways to build trust, whether it was with the city, with your team, in different ways that they can experience it. And it sounds like that is really important to you, and whatever you do next is to build trust with community and with people, and start there. And then it sounds like then you can say, let's show up together.
Absolutely. And together. Not show up to do something to a community, but to show up to understand the community first, understand what their wants and needs are, and then begin to work towards those solutions.
Yeah. And does that feel different than when you first started your journey in this work?
So different. When I first started this journey, it was about the computer model and the technical and why aren't you happy? We've got the solution.
Just take it.
Let us build this solution. You will be better. And not recognizing it's about the people.
Yeah.
It's about the people.
Yeah. So it sounds like it's been a really beautiful journey where you have been able to break lots of barriers, and it sounds like a lot of them were within you.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. And it's not over. It's not over.
And what do you want to learn? You're such a learner, and you enter, especially in this stage of your career, you're sort of very clear about not going into position, but to go in to be an explorer. As you move into this next phase, what do you want to learn?
You know, I continue to learn every day. And that's one of those things I drove my parents insane when my dad was in college when I was 3, and I kept asking Mom when I got to go to school. And so it's always been, whether it's informal or formal, a lot of my learning for the last year and a half and what I see moving forward in the immediate future is that where is my place in this community?
Where is my place in this community?
And it's going to be a place that I'm passionate about. And I'm really good at showing up. But is that always the right answer? You know, showing up in the right time and in the right way is more important than just showing up, particularly if you're going to be in the way.
So there are lots of boundary breakers listening, future boundary breakers listening. What advice would you give them if you could give them one piece of advice?
Always be looking for those opportunities, for the things that you find joy in, the areas that in most of us find joy in others' joy, in the joy of others. And so if I were saying that is and don't let an initial no discourage you. If it's something that you are interested in, ask the next person, or go get the master's degree or whatever it is. But don't take the initial no. There's a lot of people who are going to tell you no. Oh, that's crazy.
Yeah.
Why are you even thinking that?
Yeah.
Patty, why are you starting a podcast? The people will tell you all those things, and the truth of the matter is that at the end of the day, you're the one looking yourself in the mirror. And are you happy with where you are and what you're doing?
Yeah.
And I am.
And you are.
I am.
And you'd encourage everybody to do the same thing to get to that point where they can say that too.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Well, Carol, this has been amazing. Thank you so much for sharing the full breadth of your story and for bringing us into it. And we can't wait to see what you do next.
Oh, thank you. I'm looking forward to it.
Yes. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And that's another episode of the Boundary Breakers Podcast, where we are amplifying the voices of leaders who are transforming the world through their unique gifts and talents. As you have heard, Boundary Breakers rarely get there alone. If you are a current or aspiring executive seeking to enact meaningful change in your organization and the world, visit our website and learn more about Boundary Breakers strategy consulting and executive coaching services. Or if you believe you fit the profile of a boundary breaker with a message that has the potential to inspire our listeners, share your story with us through the email address in the description. Finally, don't forget to like and subscribe to be the first to know when the new episodes are uploaded. Until then, continue breaking boundaries.